Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are diving headfirst into the central schism of the technology world.
And it's not really a debate about chip speeds anymore, is it? Or software features?
No, not at all. It has become a full-blown theological split in the Church of Artificial Intelligence.
Which is why we're here.
We are, after all, your provider of belief on demand.
And today, we've stacked up the most recent pronouncements, the scriptures, if you will, from three of the most influential figures driving this entire AI narrative.
And the cognitive dissonance is it's delicious. It's amazing.
They're describing three completely different versions of reality, and they're all describing it right now at the same time.
That's right. So forget the academic conferences, forget the polite panels.
Yeah.
We are calling this the cage match of reality.
A cage match. I like that.
In one corner, we have the skeptic.
Yeah.
That's the world-class mathematician Terence Tao. He basically wants to turn on the house lights during the magic show and reveal all the wires.
Well, then you've got the architect, Demis Hassabis of Google DeepMind. He's the one trying to hold scientific reality together with, actual rigor and petabytes of data.
And then, of course, we have the prophet, Elon Musk. He's out there selling the economic apocalypse/utopia package.
And on a timeline that seems to defy physics.
And possibly math, which we'll get to.
Yeah, what makes this deep dive so timely is that all these sources, we're talking technical papers, big interviews, even Mastodon posts, they're all hitting our desks in mid-December 2025.
The future is being written as we speak.
And the most influential people in the entire space cannot agree on what AI even is, let alone what it can reliably do.
So our mission for you, the listener, is simple. We are going to break down their gospels, their timelines, their completely conflicting visions.
And then you get to decide.
You get to decide which one you believe. It's the ultimate existential consumer choice. Do you want to believe the math, the money, or the Mars colony?
Let's start with the math. The one who provides the most rigorous and, maybe the most depressing reality check.
Okay, let's unpack this with our first contestant. The man who looks at these stunning, incredible feats of AI and just sort of shakes his head and says, I know how the card trick is done.
We are talking about the field's medal-winning mathematician, Terence Tao.
He is the ultimate buzzkill at the AI hype party.
Yeah.
He really is.
His critique, which he laid out recently in a now widely shared Mastodon post, it's fundamentally a philosophical one, but, and this is key, it's built on absolutely sound technical ground.
Right.
He's not just hand-waving. He's challenging the very nature of the intelligence we think we're seeing. He looks at these powerful large language models and just says, I doubt that anything resembling genuine AGI is coming out of this.
He's just ruining the dream. You have CEOs and venture capitalists walking around talking about digital gods, creating conscious entities. And Tao comes in and says, no, you built an expensive parlor trick, and it's powered by statistical associations.
That is his core thesis. The critical difference between AGI, artificial general intelligence, which implies, genuine causal understanding, consciousness, first principles reasoning.
The real deal.
The real deal. The difference between that and what he terms AGC.
Artificial General Cleverness.
Exactly.
I think that term should be the title of this entire era of AI. It perfectly captures this moment. You ask a model to write some incredibly complex code or translate a rare ancient language, and it looks like an absolute genius.
And then you ask it to follow three simple, consistent, logical steps. And it sometimes completely falls apart. It's bizarre.
So what does AGC mean to him? How is it working under the hood?
Well, in Tao's view, it's the ability to solve complex, intellectual-looking problems using methods that are non-intelligent in the human sense. And that's what makes the outcome, in his word, unsatisfying.
Unsatisfying.
Yeah. He outlines three core techniques that prop up this cleverness, but they also reveal its fundamental limitations.
Okay, walk us through those three techniques. How is the machine generating all this cleverness without any actual understanding?
So the first one is the use of ad hoc solutions.
Ad hoc.
Ad hoc. It means the model hasn't established some general rule or, a law of physics. It's simply found a specific, unique combination of tokens and patterns that works for the prompt you gave it right now.
So it's bespoke problem solving.
Yes, via association. It's not generalization via theory. It's like teaching a student to solve one very specific type of physics problem perfectly.
Right. They can ace that one problem on the test.
But then you change one variable, just one tiny thing, and they have no idea how to adapt the method. They're lost because they never understood the principle.
To just memorize the steps.
Precisely. The second component, and this is probably the most critical one, is the stochastic nature of the entire process.
Stochastic just means random, right? Or based on probability.
Exactly. When you ask an LLM a question, it doesn't reason. It doesn't follow a logical path. It simply predicts the next statistically probable token, the next word, based on the mountain of data it was trained on.
So it's not following a logical chain from point A to point B to point C. It's just running so many rapid-fire analogies, correlations, and probability chains that it sort of stumbles upon a clever-looking outcome.
That is the absolute essence of his critique. This stochastic process means that the model doesn't know the answer in a causal or logical sense. It has simply determined that this sequence of tokens is the most likely way to complete the sentence based on its data compression.
Which makes the system inherently brittle.
Extremely. Especially when it's faced with problems that need explicit causal logic, not just probabilistic pattern matching. It's the difference between, say, memorizing the steps to a complex mathematical proof and truly understanding why that proof holds universally.
Okay, so we have ad hoc solutions in a stochastic process. What's the third component?
The third is just sheer brute force computation and scale.
The billions of dollars in GPUs.
And this is where all that money comes in. The models are so massive and the compute is so powerful that they can essentially cheat on problems that would require true intelligence in a human.
How are they cheating?
They've compressed the entire library of human knowledge, the entire internet, basically, into a mathematical artifact that can then generalize impressively for patterns within that data. By scaling up context windows and model sizes, they can hold enormous amounts of information in their short-term memory, simulating complex reasoning through just massive data recall and association.
So it looks like it's reasoning, but it's really just doing a very, very sophisticated lookup.
A lookup in a high-dimensional space, yes. And this is why Tao finds the technology fundamentally unsatisfying. It looks like intelligence. It talks like intelligence. But he says it lacks that underlying interpretable logic, the true understanding.
And this is exactly why we can mock the idea that we're building a god.
Right.
When Tao says we are just building a very, very expensive stochastic parrot that has learned to do some really impressive card tricks.
It is the ultimate anticlimax for the AGI community. You've spent hundreds of billions of dollars to successfully synthesize human text and behavior at a massive scale.
But you've only done it because you're performing interpolation in a high-dimensional space of linguistic patterns.
You haven't captured truth, you haven't captured causality, you've just captured text.
But here's the question that a CEO would ask. If the AI saves 80% of my lawyer's time in generating a legal brief, or it helps a scientist design a new molecule, does the lack of true understanding really matter?
That is the ultimate paradox here.
Isn't Tao just arguing over semantics that only mathematicians and philosophers care about?
Well, even Tao himself, the ultimate skeptic, he still acknowledges the utility. He calls these systems stochastic generators of sometimes clever thoughts.
Sometimes clever.
Sometimes. He's clear they are incredibly useful for drafting, for ideating, for finding initial hypotheses. But, and this is but this utility comes with a profound constraint.
The crucial caveat.
Yes. That value only works if, and only if, humans apply stringent verification to filter out the errors.
Because the system is stochastic, it is occasionally going to invent facts, it's going to miscalculate, it's going to violate causal laws.
And in high-stakes fields, we're talking law, engineering, medicine, financial modeling, the human must still perform the final, rigorous verification. You can't skip that step.
So the human remains the editor, the compliance officer, and critically the liability holder.
Exactly. The model might save you 80% of the labor, which is incredible, but that final essential 20%, the rigorous verification to make sure the parlor trick didn't go horribly wrong, that is still manual, and it must be perfect.
So if the system is fundamentally stochastic, based on probability and not logic, the final responsibility can't be automated away.
Never. Tao's math-based critique fundamentally limits the autonomous deployment of current AI. It's useful, but it's not ready to run the world by itself.
So, to sum up Tao, he looks at the whole AGI movement and basically says this technology is a genius apprentice, but it's a philosophical dead end for true intelligence unless we build something radically different that moves beyond clever correlation.
That is the math perspective.
Now hold that thought, because that perspective means absolutely nothing to the next prophet we have to examine.
So if Terence Tao provides the philosophical mathematical constraint on today's AI, our next speaker provides the the real-world consequence of just completely ignoring that constraint.
Yeah, we have to execute a violent pivot here.
A really violent one.
We're going from the subtle philosophical skepticism of a world-class mathematician to the relentless, immediate, high-stakes economic focus of Elon Musk.
Fasten your seatbelt.
We're moving from the academic critique of the magic trick straight into the GDP fantasy being peddled by Musk. This is the premium belief package. It's for the listener who wants to get rich fast and who believes that only technology can save civilization.
Musk is completely, and I mean completely, uninterested in Tao's distinction between cleverness and intelligence.
He does not care.
He is solely focused on deployment, scale, and critically immediate economic transformation. He views AI and robotics not as some philosophical problem to be solved, but as the only viable solution to massive geopolitical and fiscal crises.
Okay, so why the immediate urgency? Why does he believe AI has to fix the economy right now?
His core argument is all about fiscal necessity. He constantly talks about national debt and what he calls fiscal profligacy.
He's not wrong about the debt.
No, but in his view, the West, and particularly the U.S., is running these massive debts that can only be serviced if the economy grows exponentially faster than inflation and interest rates.
Which is a tall order.
It's a very tall order. And you
Yep.
couple that with severe demographic issues. You have aging populations, declining birth rates, and he sees a future scenario where current levels of productivity simply cannot sustain modern society.
So for him, AI-driven productivity isn't just a commercial opportunity. It's a desperate geopolitical necessity to avoid a societal collapse driven by debt and the lack of workers.
Exactly. The only way to outrun the debt and the demographic cliff is through a radical, rapid improvement in productivity. And he claims that can only come from automation via humanoid robots and autonomous vehicles.
And his timelines, I mean, they're not just aggressive, they are terrifyingly aggressive.
To put it mildly, he stated in mid-2025 that humanoid robots will begin impacting national GDPs and impacting them significantly within just 4 to 5 years.
4 to 5 years.
And it gets better. Robot cars, specifically his full self-driving or FSD, will have a noticeable effect on the economy in merely 1 to 2 years.
1 to 2 years.
Yeah.
So by late 2026, early 2027, my grocery bill should theoretically be getting cheaper because of FSD-powered logistics. Is that what he's saying?
That is the claim.
And this is where the cognitive dissonance just hits you like a truck.
It's a head-on collision.
How can Terence Tao's stochastic parrot, a system that needs constant human verification for complex tasks, how can that possibly handle the immense complexity, the safety requirements, the operational consistency you'd need to run the logistics, manufacturing, and transportation backbone of an entire nation's GDP?
In that timescale.
It seems impossible.
And this is the fundamental conflict between the skeptic and the prophet. Musk is betting that even if the AI is a magic trick, it's a good enough magic trick to replace human labor at an unbelievable scale. And he's betting that sheer commercial momentum will just steamroll all the scientific limitations that Tao just laid out.
The prophet's vision, though,
Yeah.
you have to admit it's immense. He called humanoid robots, Optimus, the biggest product ever.
Bigger than cell phones, bigger than cars, bigger than anything else we have ever created.
And he sees this combination of AI and robotics as the direct path to making work optional and potentially eliminating poverty within a decade or two.
He's painting a picture of a full-blown technological utopia.
And it's all made possible by a system that, according to the world's top mathematician, lacks true understanding and hallucinates constantly. The scale of the promise is just breathtaking.
It is, but now we have to introduce the necessary dose of reality that always comes with the premium belief package.
The credibility gap.
Precisely. The media sources covering Musk's latest predictions were, very quick to inject a healthy dose of skepticism.
As they should.
They cite his extensive history of missed deadlines and promoting concepts that never quite materialize, what his critics call vaporware.
And the list is long.
Yeah.
Provides a great historical benchmark for why we have to scrutinize his current timelines. He promised Teslas would be fully autonomous, what was it, back in 2017?
2017, yes.
Yeah.
And he promised a massive fleet of 1 million robo-taxis by 2020.
We're still waiting for that one. The promised Mars colony timeline just keeps sliding, as do the production timelines for his key vehicles.
And the comparison to the Cybertruck production is particularly damning.
It's the perfect example.
It is, especially when he's now promising to revolutionize global GDP with robotics in 5 years. You have to remember, the Cybertruck is a relatively simple product compared to a self-balancing, general-purpose humanoid robot.
So what were the promises versus the reality there?
Musk claimed Tesla would eventually produce 500,000 Cybertruck units per year, 500,000.
And what was the reality of the actual ramp-up, according to the latest sources?
A catastrophic failure to scale. The company only managed to deliver about 40,000 units in all of 2024.
Okay, 40,000 instead of 500,000. That's a big miss, but maybe they're ramping up now.
Well, you'd think so, but that number, instead of accelerating through 2025, it actually dropped significantly, by 38%. They only delivered 16,097 in the first 9 months of this year.
So the production rate is going down, not up. That's not a little delay.
Yeah.
That is a fundamental multi-year failure to scale and establish, albeit novel, automotive product.
And now he's promising that the far, far more complex Optimus robot will scale fast enough to redefine global labor within 60 months.
It feels like we're being asked to just suspend all disbelief entirely.
And that is why critics have openly called him the king of vaporware. The aggressive timelines are clearly part of his brand. They're designed to generate hype, to drive investment, and to fuel the explosive optimism you need to tackle these immense projects.
But they stand in stark contrast to the physical realities of manufacturing and, more importantly, the scientific reality of the AI itself.
It's a high-stakes gamble. He is betting that the market perception of an immediate AI revolution is enough to trigger the economic reordering he desires.
Regardless of whether the underlying technology has actually solved Tao's problem of true understanding.
He needs the belief now to sustain the endeavor.
And that desperation, or maybe that urgency, is what makes this perspective so fascinating. He's not waiting for AGI. He's just deploying AGC and betting that brute force scaling will solve the last 20% of problems just in time to avoid a fiscal disaster. So we've heard from the skeptic, who says it's all just correlation and clever tricks that need human oversight.
And we've heard from the prophet, who says that clever trick is going to fix the entire global economy in 5 years.
So now let's move to the middle ground, the person who is actually trying to synthesize these two extremes into a workable scientific reality.
And this is where Demis Hassabis, the CEO and co-founder of Google DeepMind, comes in. He's the architect in this scenario. He is the adult in the room who holds the blueprint for AGI, but is also meticulously honest about the gaps that still need to be closed.
Right. Hassabis is undoubtedly optimistic that AGI is reachable, but his optimism is it's grounded in verifiable scientific milestones, not just pronouncements.
He estimates a realistic timeline of 5 to 10 years for significant world-altering shifts.
Which is far more cautious than Musk's 1 to 5 years, but it's also significantly more hopeful than Tao's philosophical dead end.
His core belief is that reaching AGI requires a two-pronged approach. You need massive scaling and you need new innovation.
You can't just have one.
You need both. He says DeepMind's effort is split 50-50. They are pushing model size, and they've been very successful with Gemini 3, but they're equally dedicated to developing entirely new, scientifically rigorous systems for things like true reasoning, robust planning, and verifiable world modeling.
You cannot simply scale a stochastic parrot until it becomes truly intelligent.
No, you need an architectural breakthrough.
And this brings us to the most defining concept of the current moment, which is the paradox of jagged intelligence. You used the term Schrodinger's AI earlier, and it fits perfectly.
It really does, because these models exist in a superposition of brilliance and just basic incompetence. Hassabis coined the term jagged intelligence to describe the current performance.
What does that mean in practice?
On one hand, the models are PhD level in some highly specialized domains. He mentions their successes in coding, biology, and the astonishing feat of models winning gold medals in the International Math Olympiad.
Solving problems that only the top few hundred human students in the entire world can tackle.
They are global experts,
Yet, when you ask them a basic high school level consistency test, they fail spectacularly. They still struggle to count the letters in a word, or they fail at trivial logic tasks. Why? Why does this jaggedness happen?
Well, Hassabis points out that sometimes the failures are because of a fundamental lack of consistency, but sometimes they're due to technical minutiae that reveal the underlying pattern-matching architecture.
Let's take the letter counting problem. That one drives people crazy.
Because it seems so simple. But the failure is often rooted in something called tokenization.
Tokenization.
We, as humans, see the word apple as 5 individual letters, A-P-P-L-E. But the model is trained to process language in chunks, in tokens, which might be words, common phrases, or just parts of words. A common word like apple might be represented by a single semantic unit, just one token.
So the model isn't actually looking at the 5 letters, it's just looking at the token that means APLE.
Exactly. So when you ask it to count the letters, it often just counts the tokens it sees, which is 1. Or it relies on its probabilistic knowledge of what the typical answer should be for that word, which leads to these inconsistent and often wrong results.
It's a perfect example of how the underlying architecture, the core of Tao's cleverness, fails when it's faced with an explicit, non-semantic task.
It's not a pattern it was trained on.
So the challenge for the architect is to smooth out that dragged reality. What are the missing pieces DeepMind is trying to solve to bridge this gap between cleverness and actual AGI?
He lays out a few key areas. First and foremost is consistency and reasoning. Hassabis is focused on developing what he calls thinking systems.
Which directly addresses Tao's stochastic critique.
Correctly.
So how does a digital mind think? Is it literally pausing and reflecting on its own output?
Essentially, yes. At inference time, that's when it's generating an answer, instead of just spitting out the next high-probability token, which is what leads to that cleverness. The model is instructed to spend additional compute time generating reasoning traces or planning steps. It's basically an internal monologue that it uses for self-correction and introspection.
So the model generates a potential answer, then it internally generates a step-by-step logic chain to see if that answer actually holds up, and if the logic fails, it revises the answer before we ever see it.
That's the goal. Hassabis estimates they are only about 50% of the way there on achieving true consistency across all domains. But the goal is to make the system behave like a world-class scientist who pauses before stating a hypothesis. They double-check their proposed answer against foundational logic, rather than just blurting out the first high-probability token that comes to mind.
So that's the first piece. What's the second major issue?
The second, which directly impacts deployment and trust, is controlling hallucinations.
The big one.
Hassabis is very frank about this. He admits models still force themselves to answer when they probably shouldn't.
And that tendency stems from their training objective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Always provide an output. Always minimize the loss function.
Exactly. The solution, he believes, requires systems to develop confidence scores, much like what DeepMind achieved with AlphaFold.
AlphaFold is their program that predicts protein structures. How did confidence scores work there?
AlphaFold didn't just output a protein structure. It also outputted a measure of its own confidence for each part of that structure, how reliable the prediction was. This allowed biologists to immediately know which parts of the predicted structure to trust for experimental purposes and which parts were just a guess.
And he wants LLMs to do the same thing.
Yes. If the confidence score about an entire statement is low, the system should introspect, pause, or critically just decline to answer.
It should be able to say, I don't know.
Which would prevent the forced hallucination. This moves the system from just a stochastic predictor to a reliable scientific tool.
And the third major gap. This one seems crucial for any kind of real-world autonomous agent, whether it's Musk's Optimus robot or a scientific discovery tool.
It is. It's online learning.
Online learning.
Current systems are trained, they're post-trained, and then they're deployed as fixed, static entities. They don't continue to learn and update their knowledge once they're out in the world like we do.
So if a new fact emerges tomorrow, the model doesn't know it until the next massive, expensive, full retraining process.
Correct. And if AGI is to be truly general, it must be able to encounter new information, correct its old mistakes, and rapidly adapt. This inability to continually learn post-deployment is a critical missing piece before AGI can be fully realized and trusted to manage dynamic, real-world systems.
Okay, let's pivot to what Hassabis calls his longest-standing passion: world models. If we have these massive language models that have read everything ever written, why are simulations of the physical world so essential?
Because language, despite being incredibly rich, misses essential parts of reality. Hassabis explains that language models fundamentally miss spatial awareness, physical context, and how things work mechanically.
Intuitive physics.
Exactly. These are elements that are very hard to describe in words, but are foundational to our human intelligence. Like knowing that if you push a heavy box, it moves slower than a light one, or that if you drop a ball, it accelerates uniformly.
Language models can describe that event, but they miss the causal mechanics.
They miss the why and the how. World models are simulations that aim to understand this intuitive physics and causality. The ultimate test for DeepMind is not just generating clever text, but generating realistic, verifiable worlds. Because if you can generate a world accurately, you must have encapsulated its physical mechanics.
And this is where their video models like Genie and VO come in. They're generating these realistic videos in interactive worlds as a test of that underlying understanding.
Right, but how do you ensure the physics is actually right? Because, as we know, the models can hallucinate physics just as easily as they hallucinate facts.
And this is the crucial distinction between plausibility and truth, which ties right back to Tao's critique.
It does. Hassabis notes that the models can create things that look plausible to the naked eye, a ball rolling and stopping. But maybe it stopped too fast, or its trajectory was slightly off in a way a human wouldn't notice.
So how do they solve this?
To solve this, DeepMind is creating dedicated physics benchmarks.
What does a physics benchmark look like in practice? A test.
A very specific kind of test. They are using accurate game engines and simulation environments to recreate simple foundational A-level physics lab lessons.
Like from high school.
Exactly. Classic, rigorous problems. Things like pendulums swinging with a known mass and friction, balls rolling down different tracks, complex trajectory predictions based on known forces. The goal is to rigorously test whether the model has encapsulated Newton's 3 laws of motion with 100% accuracy.
So they're not satisfied if the model gets the answer mostly right or if the video just looks real. They demand verifiable scientific truth.
Absolutely. They need to go beyond what a casual human observer can perceive and ensure the physics holds up to a proper physics-grade experiment. Until they achieve this 100% accuracy in controlled physics benchmarks, they won't trust the systems for things like complex logistics or robotics.
Which is exactly where Elon Musk is making his massive 5-year bets.
The contrast could not be more stark.
And Hassabis is taking this simulation capability and applying it directly to training agents, right?
Yes, with projects like Sima 2, they place an agent powered by Gemini into complex virtual worlds, everything from basic geometry tests to open-world commercial video games.
But they're also doing something even more interesting. They're experimenting with plugging Genie, the world generator, directly into Sima, the learning agent.
So the AI creates the world and the AI learns within it at the same time.
It's like an infinite training loop.
It creates an almost infinitely rich training environment. The learning agent explores the world, and Genie, the generator, responds by creating new, targeted scenarios and tasks on the fly based on the agent's progress. This allows for rapid, automated training where tasks can get progressively more difficult, solving the data scarcity problem in certain physical domains.
It lets the AI learn causality much faster than just training on static data sets ever could.
That's the idea.
This dedication to scientific rigor is admirable, but Hassabis also addressed the elephant in the room, the crazy race condition created by commercialization. Has the pressure to deploy, pushed by people like Musk, hurt the science?
He's very nuanced on this. He acknowledged that if he'd had his way 15 years ago, he would have preferred to keep AI generalized models in the lab for much longer.
Focusing just on scientific grand challenges.
Right, things like AlphaFold for protein folding or maybe curing cancer before these generalized models were ever released commercially.
So what were the costs and benefits of the sudden rush to market?
He says they lost something and they gained something. The pros are huge. Massive resources have poured into the field, accelerating progress exponentially. And the general public is now only a couple of months behind the frontier, which gives everyone a sense of what's coming.
And the cons.
The cons are that the intense, ferocious competition makes it significantly harder to do rigorous, careful, peer-reviewed science. He says his primary job has become balancing world-class engineering, the scaling, with world-class cautious research, the innovation.
And finally, we have to discuss the long-term societal implications.
Yeah.
Because Hassabis' warning is arguably the most urgent of the three, even more urgent than Musk's timeline.
He thinks AGI will likely be 10 times bigger than the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, and happen 10 times faster.
10 times faster. That means the entire transformation unfolds over a single decade, not a century.
And that speed demands a level of preparedness that just does not exist.
It doesn't. Hassabis points out that the entire modern structure of work-labor laws, social safety nets, unions, all of that was worked out over the long, slow duration of the Industrial Revolution. 100 years of societal adaptation.
We do not have that kind of time now.
Not even close.
So if society transforms in a decade, What kind of radical changes are required? We can't just tinker with current policy.
It forces us to seriously consider entirely new economic systems. Hassabis believes that while something like universal basic income, UBI, might be necessary, it's probably insufficient. It's just an add-on to the current capitalist structure.
So what does he suggest?
He suggests we need totally novel economic and critically democracy models.
Novel democracy models, what does that even mean?
He mentions ideas from some influential economists where citizens might not just vote for representatives or policies, but they would allocate a certain amount of, say, civic credits for what they want to see in their community.
Like funding for a new park or better public transportation or a tennis court.
Exactly, like a civic currency. But here's the crucial innovation. Those who consistently vote for things that prove to be successful, well-received, or economically viable would gain proportionally more influence or weight in subsequent votes.
So it's a system that attempts to reward successful, informed civic judgment.
Right. It's an attempt to design entirely new mechanisms for resource allocation and governance in a post-scarcity, post-labor world where decisions need to be made much faster than traditional politics allows.
That is truly thinking outside the box. A system where influence is earned based on demonstrated successful civic judgment, rather than just raw population numbers.
But underlying all of this is the philosophical question. If AGI resolves the problem of scarcity and work becomes optional, what happens to human purpose?
That is the core challenge the architect is carrying. So many people derive their identity, their dignity, their purpose from their labor, from providing for their family.
If AGI achieves true labor replacement, we are left with the profound, species-defining question of what humans should do. What does it mean to be human, and what activities are uniquely valuable to us?
And Hassabis admits he's worried. He's worried that global institutions aren't built to handle this speed, especially with geopolitical tensions making international collaboration harder than ever.
He's actually hoping that a small, contained incident involving an early AGI might be a kind of warning shot to humanity, something that forces us to establish international safety standards before something truly catastrophic happens. So let's synthesize the three wildly conflicting gospels we've just explored in this deep dive. We're looking at the absurdity and the urgency of the current AI moment.
Three versions of reality, all hitting the media landscape in mid-December 2025, and they are radically, fundamentally incompatible.
On one side, you have Terence Tao offering the grounded reality of the math. His scripture says the current technology is artificial general cleverness.
A massive stochastic magic trick that is fundamentally unsatisfying because it lacks true causal understanding.
And it's only useful if you apply stringent human verification, making it a philosophical dead end for true AGI, but a productive tool for humans.
Then on the complete other side, shooting across the timeline like a rocket booster, we have Elon Musk, the prophet. He's offering the money and the promise of a global revelation.
He completely ignores Tao's philosophical constraints and declares the magic trick is ready for immediate deployment. He's promising that humanoid robots and robot cars will transform national GDPs in 1 to 5 years.
Making work optional and eliminating poverty. A prediction we have to view with extreme skepticism, given his history as the king of vaporware, especially with the Cybertruck under delivery.
And then in the middle, trying to build a bridge to a scientifically verifiable future, you have Demis Hassabis, the architect. He's offering the nuance and the pathway.
He sees jagged intelligence. These models are PhD level in some areas, like coding and biology, and they're complete idiots in others, like counting and consistency.
But he believes the gap can be closed in 5 to 10 years by combining massive scaling, like they've done with Fish by 3, with architectural innovation. Specifically, building rigorous world models that understand physics and creating self-checking thinking systems.
The central conflict, therefore, is this. Can a clever magic trick that struggles with basic letter counting possibly sustain the logistics and consistency required for global GDP?
As Musk promises. Or must we wait for the rigorous, difficult, multi-year scientific breakthroughs that Hassabis is working on?
Each of these perspectives demands a different approach from you, the listener. They are essentially three competing belief products being offered for your immediate consumption.
Do you want to buy the Taoist cynicism? It's safe, it's grounded in verifiable mathematics, and it provides a clear-eyed view of the technology's limitations.
The downside, it's fundamentally depressing. It suggests all this AI hype is just a very expensive software layer that will never achieve consciousness or true reasoning. You, the human, must remain responsible for the results forever.
Or perhaps you prefer the Muskian utopia. This is the high-risk, high-reward belief product. It promises immense personal wealth and the end of poverty and labor, all within a decade.
The downside. It requires you to ignore all prior production failures, disregard the known scientific limitations, and rely on blind faith that commercial will and explosive investment will simply overcome physics.
Or finally, there's the Hassabis wait-and-see package. It's the measured, scientific approach. It validates both the excitement and the frustration of current AI. It bets that focused innovation will solve the jagged reality and lead us to a scientifically rigorous AGI within a decade.
The downside to that one, though, is that it carries the heavy implication that we need to redesign our entire economic and social infrastructure now, or face a transformation that happens 10 times faster than the Industrial Revolution, without the governance institutions or the social resilience to handle it.
And that transformation speed is the single most critical geopolitical consideration here.
If AGI is coming in a decade, and it's 10 times bigger than any previous revolution, who is preparing for that economic disruption? Which nation-states are building the new democracy models and social structures?
And which are simply betting on the brute force of commercial capitalism to sort it all out at the last minute.
If the whole thing unfolds that fast, the race condition isn't just between the companies building the models, it's between entire societies trying to adapt to the results.
Which makes geopolitical conflict over resource allocation and influence almost inevitable. That speed is terrifying, and it's happening right now whether you believe the math or the money.
Something for you to ponder deeply as you decide which future you're going to invest your belief in.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.
Remember, reality is optional, but belief is mandatory.